Hey folks, let's talk about some myths and facts of TDIU because this is something that there's just a lot of misinformation about. Even the VA gets it wrong quite frequently. Myth number one, if I'm on TDIU, I'm not allowed to work. That's just not true, but the rules are complicated. So first of all, let me explain a little bit about TDIU. TDIU is for veterans who aren't rated at 100%. They might be rated at 70%, or if they have one single 60% rating, you're what's determined to be schedularly qualified for TDIU. But it's where, maybe the math doesn't work out because VA math is weird, but for some reason, your VA service-connected disabilities are preventing you from gaining and maintaining substantial gainful employment. So the VA is going to increase your rate to 100% while you can't find that employment. What's substantial gainful employment? Well, this is kind of a complicated topic too, but the way the VA looks at that is, what is your annual income? And if your annual income is below the poverty level, if your annual income is not that high, then they consider that unable to gain and maintain substantial gainful employment. What if your income level is $30,000, but it's inconsistent throughout the year? Well, that might also not be substantial gainful employment, but it gets trickier. Just because you're receiving TDIU doesn't mean you can't work. It doesn't mean that. There's no law against you working or trying to work. And if trying to work or working makes you happy, you should consider doing that because for some people, work is very fulfilling. Now, again, if you need the ability to heal and recuperate and get better, then maybe you shouldn't work. That's a very personal decision. I can't make that for you. If you work, it's not like the TDIU police are going to come by and say, stop working or we're going to take away your TDIU. It's not how it works at all. So let's say you're going along and you make $10,000, $12,000 in a year. Well, the IRS is going to share those numbers with the VA, and the VA is probably not going to care. Now, let's say one year you have a good year and you make $25,000. Well, what's going to happen is the VA is going to say, hey, Mr. Veteran or Miss Veteran, I see you're receiving TDIU, but you made this money this last year. Are you still unemployable? And we're proposing to sever your TDIU or cancel your TDIU. And you can respond to that. And you might respond to that saying, hey, listen, this was a one-time gig that I had where I was working for a family member for a couple months doing a one-time project and I haven't been able to find work since. That's not substantial gainful employment. That's a one-time thing. Or maybe you came across a really good project. Maybe you sold a piece of art for $25,000. We all know artists' lives, that's very inconsistent, right? You can have great years that can be feast or famine. Again, the TDIU is not just going to yank it away from you. They're going to start asking questions. If you have answers for those questions, like this is a one-time thing, I sold a piece of art, or I did a one-time consulting gig and I haven't been back to work since, that might be enough to keep your TDIU going. That's the fact when it comes to TDIU. Myth number two, TDIU is only effective the date I file my VA Form 8940, which is the TDIU form. And this is where it gets super complicated. And I'm not even going to try to explain all the rules to it because the rules are layered and thick. And quite frankly, the VA doesn't even get this right most of the time. And it involves appeals to the Board of Veterans' Appeals. TDIU is one of those things where, depending on if the claim's continuously pursued, they're supposed to go back until the date that you could no longer gain or maintain substantial gainful employment. Maybe you had to quit your job because the PTSD was bad enough. Maybe you had, this is when the back pain was so severe that you couldn't get out of bed anymore and report to the office. This is where it gets complicated because they can't always go back super far, especially if you haven't continuously pursued it, and they can't always go back more than a year prior to a claim for increase. So the rules get really, 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 really complicated in these things. But what I recommend you do and to be on the lookout for is that if you've been pursuing your VA disability claim for a while and you've been unemployed for a while and they grant you TDIU and it's effective pretty recently, even though it's been years since you last worked and it's been years that you've been working on this VA claim, there might be something wrong with that effective date. Here's the other tip. If you're applying for VA disability or if you're applying for an increase in your VA disability and it has something to do with the fact that you're no longer working, go ahead and submit that VA form 8940 so that you can get the ball rolling on the TDIU form. But like I said, The rules on effective dates, super complicated. There's a case called Rice v. Shinseki that's about 15 years old, and the VA still hasn't really gotten to fully understanding or implementing it yet. And if you ask 5, decision review officers at the VA, you'll get 5 different answers on what it means. In fact, if you ask 5 Board of Veterans Law judges exactly how Rice works and is applied to your individual case, you're going to get 5 different answers. Bottom line is, if you're applying for VA disability or an increase in VA disability and your VA disabilities have forced you to be unable to work, submit that TDIU form. It's not going to stop you from going back to work if you recuperate or if you try to work and you find a job. And again, some people find jobs that fit their needs perfectly and that make a very good living even after they've been out of the workforce for a while. It happens. Don't be afraid to do that just for fear of losing your TDIU. Again, the TDIU police aren't going to come out and arrest you because you tried to work and you got a job that can accommodate you. At the same time, don't commit fraud. Don't go around working under the table, collecting your Venmo payments, thinking that Venmo is not going to track or send a 1099 at the end of the year, thinking that you're in the clear, and then say, oh no, I haven't been working. These are all payments from friends, right? So be mindful of that. Don't commit fraud, don't lie. But again, the TDIU police is not going to stop you from working just because you're receiving TDIU. Hope that was informative. If you've been denied TDIU and you meet the criteria otherwise, or if your VA disability has gotten so bad that you can't work, and you've filed for TDIU and you haven't received it, or you think the effective date is incorrect, reach out. Maybe we can represent you. But again, do so quickly because you have to appeal these things pretty quickly because you only have 1 year to do so. With that in mind, I hope this video was informative. Take a look at the other videos I got. Until next time, take care.